Hi everybody, and welcome to Conversation versus Written Communication in the Healthcare Industry. Good to see you all here today. Today we're specifically going to be talking about the forms of communication for the delivery of results to a patient. The good way to do it and the bad way to do it. So let's move on. So this is just a basic breakdown of what's going to be happening today. We're going to go through the purpose, the reasoning behind all of our investigations into the two communicative channels used, a little bit of background information about the organisation that was used, which is All Round Health and Community Care, a brief description about clinical investigations or results, because that is a sort of in-depth topic that you could sort of go right through for many hours, but we're just going to sort of be touching probably more on the basic things like your blood pathology results, more so than surgical and neurosurgical and all that sort of stuff. The two communication channels, good communication, poor communication, and then obviously we'll analyze what we've come up with, the reasoning why, and let you guys come in with a few Q&As to answer any questions that you might have by the end of this presentation. So the purpose that we were really trying to strive for here was to find an excellent form of communication when delivering results to a patient. So when you're in the consultation, face-to-face, is that a better way to do it? Or with results, you've already had a consultation, so you're sort of just looking for the outcome of that specific reason you might have come in for your consultation. So therefore, would it just be easier to get a written form of communication for that instead? So we have gone with conversation versus written. Within consultations, we found it very difficult to find any other sort of forms of communication that we may have been able to use without making things really complicated. So, conversation can include interpreters, can include your sign language, for example. Written can cover many mediums, email, letters, etc. But basically we've broken it down to just written and conversation. The clinical observations and the outcomes are real life situations. This is what's happening out there when you go to see a doctor or some specialist, for example, and you want to get a discussion around your results. So these are things that happen every day out there in the community. All Round Health and Community Care. They're a not-for-profit that provides healthcare to homeless and vulnerable community members. Healthcare covering medical services, allied health services, and mental health. They're a registered charity, so they are registered with the ACNC. So that means that they're like the Salvation Army, Mission Australia, and all those other large charities, so they can accept donations for the work that they do. They're a multidisciplinary clinical team. So what does that mean in particular? They're providing a holistic form of care to those people that they engage with. So they've got doctors, they've got nurse practitioners, psychologists, dietitians, they've got nurses, exercise physiologists, volunteers, social workers and podiatrists. Sometimes they'll get occasional occupational therapists to pop through, but other than that, they're just there providing a holistic team of clinical people to provide the absolute utmost beneficial care they possibly could to our homeless and vulnerable. It's a need that was found when there was excessive ED presentations in Hobart over winter, and they kind of have stepped in now, reduced homeless people and vulnerable people using the ED as their general practitioner. we've linked them in with other services as well, so higher chances of getting housing, making sure that their payments are coming through Centrelink. So there's a lot of social work aspect within the organisation as well. But the key there is that they provide medical services and allied health services to those living, sleeping rough, or living on the streets, couch surfing, and that may not just engage in mainstream general practice. So let's move on now to results or clinical investigations. I presume everyone's gone to the doctor and had their blood taken. The blood's been sent off, come back. And that is basic pathology collection and investigation. So pathology is a medical specialty that determines the cause and nature of diseases by examining and testing body tissues, could be biopsies, pap smears, taking of blood, perhaps even testing your urine. A little bit of an investigative analysis of what's going inside, what's happening internally within us. It is something that you need to be trained to understand the outcomes of. It's not something you can just grab a pathology report and then go, okay, oh wow, okay, yep, I can see that I've got Hep C, great. It's not that simple, so there is definitely training that is required, so that is where a doctor or a nurse practitioner would step in and have that training and the ability to read those pathology reports. Reports are obviously written in a way that the layman can't understand, yet has to be delivered to somebody. So we actually have to, let someone know what the report is telling us, what is the outcome of their tests. And since it's not in a layman's term, we have to take it from a specific scientific record into a way that the general public could understand. And that's where the communication channel is hugely important to get it right. The communication channel. Great little picture we've got here. Can you see that? There's a sender, there's a receiver, and in between there's a channel. Communication channels. That's how it works. So the key element though is that the sender sends a message to the receiver, and the receiver actually understands the delivered message correctly. Think back to when you used to play games like Chinese Whispers. A group of people get together in a circle, one person would start. By the time the message came back around, it usually was not the original message. So that's pretty much a communication channel, and the things that can go wrong with communication channels. Obviously they don't always go wrong. You can deliver your message and get it spot on. Yet there is times when things don't go quite so right. So our research led us to understand that good communication in the delivery of results is the use of conversation. So with conversation, there's many factors involved. It's not just simply a mouth moving and some sounds coming out. You've got body language, the way your posture could be whilst telling someone their results, the fact that you may have your arms crossed, if you use your arms quite a lot when you speak, so you can accentuate a lot of movement to get your message across. Voice projection also is very important. The tone that you use, perhaps the pitch and the speed that you say things. Sometimes when you say things very quickly, people can get very anxious. It all comes down to a combined package of delivering the message. So conversation has many factors. The main component, though, I truly have found in this is the use of language. Language plays a significant component in conversation. Specific words that are used, for example, but seems to create a form of a confronting word. It usually ends up in an argument if someone uses the word but. Other words to avoid whilst having a conversation would be, for example, the word try. There's no commitment when using that word. So the language is very, very important when using conversation to deliver a message. So with the clinical team and a patient, they have to make sure that the language is of the right level to the patient. So if someone's come from a less educated background and they're not as academic as someone else, they may need to use specific words to get the message across. And another thing to consider also with conversation and the use of language and the use of specific words is that everybody internally represents things differently. So some people are known to be more visual or auditory, or even maybe a touchy-feely kind of person, a kinesthetic. So if someone is a visual person, for example, you could say certain little leading vocabulary sentences such as, do you see the picture I'm putting before you? You know, you've got hepatitis C. I can see that that's going to cause X, Y, and Z to you, yet, you know, looking forward to the future, it is curable. So there's an example of how you can use visual kind of words, and there's audio and also the kinesthetic words as well. I feel as though this is a really good outcome for you is a kinesthetic kind of sentence. So they're also very important when using language to deliver a message through conversation. So these are just a quick list of predicate phrases that sometimes people may use when they are particularly, say if they're particularly visual, they may quite often say, it appears to me that you were late because of blah, blah, blah. If they're auditory, then they may, you know, say things like call on, or you've given me an earful. And a kinesthetic would, you know, feel, hold on. The words have to have feeling to them. So, for example, keep your shirt on. That's a kinesthetic phrase. So just a quick little snippet of different predicate phrases that certain people may say. So we've discussed good communication being conversation, and now we're going to see why poor communication is written. Why written has been shown as the poor way to communicate results to a patient. When we put something down on paper, like a written message on paper, is the message lost with the words that are used? It's a good question, isn't it? It can get lost. It depends on how we've written the words. The grammar can affect the message. It can make it sound confusing. It can also make it sound like a question instead of a statement. So it's very important to check grammar when writing written messages. With emails, for example, a lot of people may use cap locks if they're angry, if they're raising their voice. It's a known thing that if there's cap locked sentences, usually the person was not too quite happy. Can also lead on to the excessive use of the exclamation mark or the ... to decide, you know, that something else is coming, but I'm just going to keep you in the dark about that. Today's society, with the use of email, I literally have to say that most people nowadays email. There's always people saying, oh, we need an email trail for that to sort of always have an idea of what was going on. But yet there are so many variants that can display emotion in an email or in a written message, let's just say. Does the message really get through? I mean, how many of us today would read an email before we send it? We might read it 3-4 times and adjust it accordingly until we finally feel that we've got the exact sentence that we want to, or the exact message that we want to get through to somebody, in the hope that at the other end, when they read it, that they've read it in that way. And their emotions too at that stage when they're reading it, are they in a sad mood or a happy mood? You know, that's also going to have a little bit of an effect on how they take that, how they see or hear or feel that message is being portrayed to them. So that's why written messages have got so much lacking, or they're classified as a poor communication tool with the provision of results. Primarily because results are written in a scientific way, so a lot of people can't actually decipher what they're trying to say. And also that when they do get a letter or something about their results, they automatically tend to go into a bit of a heightened anxiety, thinking that there's automatically something wrong. People always seem to go for the worst case scenario instead of the best case scenario. So internally we've discovered that the written is definitely the poorest form of communication when delivering results to a patient. So as you can see here, written results, hard to interpret if not qualified, can create a sense of urgency even if the results are normal. So let's consider conversation and how it allows more effective means of discussing results with a patient. So internally within all-round health and community care, staff have noticed that when both communication methods are used for the delivery of results to a patient, that when they receive them face-to-face in a conversation style, they always come out of the consultation knowing exactly what is in front of them, be it normal, abnormal, or do we need to do further investigations. When the patients don't come in, they ignore constant calls to come in for their appointment to discuss their results. They're sent a letter and a copy of their results. Usually within 24 hours of receiving that letter and their results, they're calling up and asking to book in to have a chat about their results because they just cannot get their head around what's been sent to them. So it just highlights the fact that the communication method of conversation is so much needed. It's imperative in the healthcare industry. The written communication is very poor in healthcare. It may be better in other industries, but within the healthcare industry, it really needs that personal one-on-one scenario to make sure that messages are delivered with the necessary message that is required to achieve exactly what you need to achieve. So literally, just to conclude, you can see here there's a little bit of a breakdown of what was said before about the patients and their appointment and the discussion of results. The organisation has numerous amounts of policies and procedures in place for the delivery of results, yet the main component of each of those policies and procedures is that they are delivered face-to-face. That is actually probably the first line in most of the policies and procedures. Results need to be given face-to-face so that there is no miscommunication with the message that we're trying to relay about the patient's results. Very, very important, and it's probably something that as technology evolves is going to be a difficult one to tackle within the healthcare industry. We've found a fair amount of articles that highlight the fact that the healthcare industry just doesn't seem to work with a written form of communication to deliver results. Thanks so much for being here today. Now, has anyone got any questions at all?